I just kind of oops, I welcome each of you to maybe turn on your videos if you feel comfortable. I want to introduce a little bit this evening. Hey, hi, Katya. Good to see you. Introduce a little bit this evening, why we're here, and also introduce my co-presenters. Okay, so we're here really to talk about an upcoming module that we're doing, an in-person module called The Body Remembers. And it's an expressive art therapy offering. Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about we'll talk about what the contents are over this discourse. But before we do that, I would really love if Pallavi and Kripa could introduce themselves, tell us as much as you can about your work. I do really want uh, the participants here today to get a sense of where you all are coming from, because I think the beauty of this program is really bringing in these three diverse strands of expressive arts together in this in-person offering. And I know that most people know me, but and of course, if you've been associated with SMART, you'll know Pallavi and Kripa. But I just want to say both of them have so much more to them than the way we see them at SMART. Yeah, the short thing. So I really want to take this opportunity, Pallavi and Kripa, if you don't mind, really just sharing a little bit more beyond what you do at SMART. Yeah. Do you want to start,
Kripa,
Pallavi or Kripa?
Kripa, why don't you go ahead? I'll go next. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to gather with all of you here online. So I'm Krupa Javeri. I have recently finished my PhD in expressive arts therapy, so that's something to celebrate. I'm an expressive arts therapist now for about 15 years, and I also, of the many labels that I can choose to put to myself, I like to use the word artographer. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with this term, but it's A/R/T, artographer, and it's multidimensional, like we all are. So it includes the roles of artist, researcher, and teacher. So those are some of the roles that I embody, that I continue to explore, and each informs the other. So on this program, but three other programs as well at the moment. Point of view that I was born in the US and my parents are from Gujarat, but I've decided to be based in South India near Pondicherry. So I trained in the West, and I'm very fortunate to have had the privileges of education and upbringing there. And I really felt a calling to come back to my roots and to be based in India. And in these 15 years, it's just been a living research, understanding that a lot of what these dead white men have told us to do in this field is not necessarily relevant to the work in this cultural context. And so I find that I'm positioned uniquely to give a lot of permission to whoever I encounter, especially in India and in Asia, to remind everyone and to be all the resources that are already here, functioning for centuries within the culture and within the traditions, within the rituals. So I'm just kind of reflecting back a lot of those within the field, so that together we create, a new identity for this work. So a lot of my niche in the field is around traditional art forms, things like kolam and rangoli, or henna and mindi, mandala art forms that have existed here for a long time. Deeply investigating them, encountering them, and then adapting them for use as therapeutic work today, especially. What else can I say? What you might not know about me is that at this very moment, I happen to be in Nepal. I'm here for an artist residency. And it's just an incredible socio-political moment in history. So I'm witness to a revolution that's happening here on the streets. The youth have emerged, to become leaders in a way. And as an interim prime minister, they've elected a female, which is the first time ever. And I just feel like I'm in the future. I'm learning so much by the dynamism and the adaptability of the people here. And it's really just teaching me a lot. And so I guess I hope to stay present with all the lessons that continue to come. And I'll share more as we continue talking. I'll hand it to
Thank you.
Pallavi.
Thanks, Kripa. Yeah, Pallavi, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kripa. Yeah, so I'm Pallavi Chanda. I am a creative arts therapist. I have my training in arts-based therapy, which I did at the World Center for Creative Learning Foundation in Pune, but I think in 2012. That was one of the first few certificate courses that came out in India when it comes to studying the arts therapeutically. And then I went on to do my master's in drama and movement therapy in London with a scholarship. So yeah, ever since I've come back, a lot of my practice has been um, to really look at the relevance of the arts therapy and contextualizing it within our field here. So I entered the space as an artist, just like Kripa was talking about. As artists, we enter the space. And I want to say growing up, I did not have much access to the arts. It was came from a family that was quite conservative. It was about studying, getting a job and really moving towards making money. Um, I don't remember attending any class. I didn't have access to any kind of art or dance class that most of us might have done growing up. But growing up, that was not something that I had access to. But I am neurodivergent. I only learned in my early 30s that this is something I've been managing and masking all my life. And so it made sense to me actually why I leaned so much on the arts growing up and why I sort of put it. Um, I studied arts. I went to an art school in Bangalore. But it wasn't easy to do it because my family was like, what are you going to do studying the arts? But in my college years, I stumbled upon drama. Um, and that's where I found a language to make sense of the world, make sense of how I present myself in the world. And it was that tool that kind of made so much sense and that language that was accessible. Um, and then after that, there was no turning back. I fought to do my undergraduation in the arts and then found my way to this wonderful art center that was offering arts-based therapy for children with special needs. And that's where a lot of the learning happens. Then I went on to do my master's. Now, the reason I'm kind of framing it this way is because most of us, growing up in a country like India, studying the arts is not normal or is not something that is just offered, and it's something you have to fight for. And that's something that's definitely been a part of my experience. Um, so over the years, I've come to understand that, okay, what is it that I do? It's actually I work at the intersection of arts and health, where arts can be a health resource. And I've come to understand this language because I know that's how it worked for me. It was a resource and it still is a resource. And every day as I do this work and as I interact with people, I'm learning the language. I'm learning to hone myself in terms of how I relate to it and how much and how potent it is. Some of my colleagues are here, which is very exciting. So when it comes to work, I can broadly sort of place it in two spaces. I work a lot with communities. One space is working with existing communities, like children with special needs. Also worked for years with young people, how what we would term as children at risk, where they are young people and children from communities that are underserved or marginalized. And that has been really a volume of my work in terms of understanding um, what arts mean in a space like that and how can we make it more accessible, where children learn better ways to cope using the arts. And that has been a really rich space where I've learned a lot in terms of how to make this work more relevant and accessible, and also culturally relevant, which is something I know Kripa also really works towards. And the other work, the piece of work that's really important to me is building communities of care. And that's where been working with older adults, adults with dementia and other neurological challenges, as well as caregivers, caregivers caring for loved ones with mental illness and other such communities. But this has been majority of my work. And with SMART, I'm on the faculty, the FECAT faculty as well as EXP. And yeah, I will speak more in the next few hours together.
Thank you,
Over to
Pallavi. Thank you
yeah.
so much. Just very quickly, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Brinda, and I'm the founder of Studio for Movement Arts and Therapies. My own journey, I think, started with performance. I was a dance specifically. I started performing when I was 3, and professionally at 17. And I just love dance, love being on stage. It made me come alive in um, but if I look back, and I have been looking back for various reasons, but one of the things that I realize is from my own path and my process has always been around the body, and more and more it's about how to be, how to inhabit the body, how to be and in that inhabiting of the body, how to be in sensual engagement with life. So I think my work really revolves around the deep feminine. Yeah, so the path of eros, the path of yeah, yeah, the path of the feminine is what I would say. This the body remembers itself has, I think, the main the tagline, or what we've really taken as a base in which to explore this module, is what Carl Jung calls the unholy trinity, which is the body, the feminine, and the shadow. And that is also uh, the ground from which the expressive body program has developed. So we are looking at so it's inner work. It's the larger context of the expressive body, and we have like Katya here. Maybe a little later on the day she can also say a few words. The expressive body itself uh, is a advanced well, it's an expressive art therapy training program for practitioners. Yeah, it's a second level. It's for practitioners on how and we really, how do we use the arts through wounding, to navigate through wounding, trauma, healing, well-being. Yeah, so one of the things, and so the three things that Jung talks about, which is the body, the feminine, and the shadow, those are the portals through which we make this exploration. I'm just going to pause there for a moment because I feel like I've said a lot of different words. Just maybe I just take a little pause, and I'm going to come back to the words unholy trinity. Yeah, because there was the Holy Trinity of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, which is what the Western world worshipped. And in that worship, there was something that was kind of separate. There was a separation or a subjugation of the body, the feminine, and the shadow. And and Jung kind of offered this as portals into the deeper self. Um, I actually am going to ask Kripa or Pallavi, either of you, if you can tell us a little bit about, because I think most of us here know, we're quite familiar with the word term shadow, right? Of our own individual shadow, that part of us which we cannot see, that always exists. In fact, the closer you are to the light, the greater the shadow. But I just wonder if we can talk a little bit about the collective shadow, and how you see it in your work. I mean,
Yeah, I can start. I mean,
thank
it's
you.
a big question.
I know.
Um, I mean, I can't help but stay present with everything that's happening in the world right now. I think that the shadow is being revealed to us through so much conflict, war, this need for one group of people to dominate another. They're just repeating narratives of this and the violence that's, occurring with all of these narratives just unfolding over and over again. So I think that it's really interesting in our work. I feel like we each have a responsibility, and within this work, there's easier access to our own shadow, to the chaos and the mess that lives within us, to the darkness, to um, what is not necessarily perfect or organized or makes sense to the outside world, the parts of us that are not conditioned to be any particular way, to be beautiful, to be right, where there's really permission to be authentic and to be ourselves. And so I think that's something very precious, unusual, and sacred to be able to offer spaces where people can meet their more authentic selves. So the shadow to me is rich and deep. It's not so scary. I think that even that word shadow or the polarization of light and shadow, um, we can
Hmm.
often think of it in a negative light, but I think that it's actually very
Yeah,
rich and deep. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know, Pal, if you want to add a little bit more, or Kripa, you want to, the reason we chose that Leonard Cohen song was really about get your perfect offering. And I just wonder, when you talk about this fragmentation and you talk about um, the shadow's not necessarily, it's dark, it's unknown, um, it's also rich and it's deep. And what is it like? Yeah, so our yeah, I mean, I don't know if you could talk a little bit about this perfectionism in art. When we where we only when we look at art, or most people when they encounter art, they're like, well, but I'm not an artist. I can't draw, I can't dance. But what is it about the expressive art therapies itself that is accessible to everybody, and how, for me, perfectionism is kind of connected to the shadow in many ways, because there's just one thing that we kind of want and are willing to look at, and everything else then, which could be rich and could be nuanced and could be healing, is all kind of repressed. Yeah, either of you, Pallavi or Kripa. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll first respond to the aspect of shadow and then go into sort of segue into the perfectionism. Yeah, like I want to take off from what Kripa mentioned about, that being so potent, but the fact that it can also seem really scary. And so the idea of the shadow is something that we want to avoid. And that's something that's a constructed thought that's sort of put onto us. And somewhere it is something we need to avoid. But so is most other things that we otherwise would avoid or have been sort of programmed to avoid, which is actually things that maybe would get help us get in touch more with ourselves. And that's the power of all the systems that have actually kept things going the way they need to. And so it comes as a counter. It comes, for me, the shadow, or rather building one's relationship with the shadow, is actually really building your relationship with your humanness. Because there's all these ideas about how we should be and how we're supposed to be, but who's come up with it? Who's constructed this? So an important question for me every time I'm interacting with this, with any aspect of my shadow, where, because it can be confusing, you are going against the tide, um, is to keep asking myself, who benefits from this? Where's the power in this right now? What's taking away my power? And when it and so aspects like perfectionism is constructed in a way where we do not then get in touch with things that are authentically us. Because there's an idea that I need to chase, and this idea will help me arrive at this sort of this idea of how things should be. And this is again something that's constructed. And that chase is going to keep me occupied in something that's external and away from what is me and what is truly authentically me. And then there's that fight. But parts of what we call the shadow will show up. These repressed parts will show up, and it will conflict with what we want. And I think personally, I've had so many of these examples in my life. Um, well, early on, just fighting for the fact that I wanted to do the arts, if I go back to that example, um, I was constantly called stubborn, and if I just gone into being, no, I have to be a good girl and just follow what my parents do, I would have completely missed this choice. But I was like, yeah, I'm stubborn, whatever. I'll be stubborn. And I'm glad I leaned into that, because that's and it's not the stubbornness that's the problem. It's the fact that I was really connected to something that felt right and that felt true to me. And it is a fight. I'm sure all of us have experiences with not just our loved ones, but also with the larger collective on a day-to-day basis, where we are interacting with these systems. And as we interact with these systems, it makes us question our own position. And so when we look at what's happening in the world right now, I literally wake up every morning and they're like, protest, protest, protest. And a lot of young people, um, thankfully, taking up space. And it's a fight. And I have goosebumps as I'm talking, because there's so much for us to learn from that sort of energy that's coming our way. Yeah, I'm really like, it is difficult, it's hard. This work also sometimes forces you to slow down. And how it shows up for us is really unique, I feel, to each one's journey and process. Um, so now if I come down to perfectionism, I went to art school and I was constantly given these formats of what is the right thing to do and how I'd sort of journey that and then move towards the classical artist. So it was always about um, this certain kind of framing that really made me question why I was in art school. It really made me question a lot of things, and I'm glad I had that inclination to question, uh, and 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 sort of be a little loud about it and be like, no, this is not sounding right. Of course, I built skill, um, but it was still something that didn't really sit well. I can do all the drawings, but it's still not something that I want to do. Um, so I had to move away from perfection, this idea that was passed on to me to sort of meet myself. Um, and that's something I think I met in a lot of my clients when I do my client work, groups of people I work with, as well as children. And the minute there is a permission, an invitation to say, no, actually, you don't have to make it uh, look like what you think it should look, but really stay with what's coming for you. Play with the color, play with the form, and there's a lot of unlearning to do before you really arrive at it. And it's that unlearning, that period of confusion, which I find very potent, because that's where we're sort of letting go of these many systems that we've internalized. Um, but yeah, maybe I'll pause there and sort of tap Krupa into the conversation. Oops, did we lose Krupa?
Did we?
I think so.
Okay.
Ah,
Well,
she's
there she's back.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't
Hey,
know,
Kripa.
Kripa.
I just got
Okay.
I just picked up. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, we were talking about perfectionism, and I know that Kripa,
So
you have. Oh, we
yeah,
can't hear you.
I think just to
Maybe Kripa, you can keep your video off.
can you hear
Uh,
me now?
it's lagging, so I don't know if you turned your video off, if that would be better. I don't know what's going on with the internet. I am I clear, Pallavi?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Is
Yes.
this better?
Yeah. No, Kripa, I think it's still in and out. But I also
It
know that,
might be my connection. Can you hear?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's, you might, yeah, now that your video is off, maybe can hear you better.
We were saying about perfectionism, especially. And yeah, I think I can just reiterate that and um, also say that I think, so many people that I work with, they come with some traumatizing experience of an art teacher who told them that their art was not good enough, that there was a right or a wrong way to create. And so many people, I mean, most people that I work with have fear around their expression. And I think that this is such a shame, because when given permission and invitation outside of that oppressive world of perfectionism that Pallavi was talking about, the entire realm of our imaginations exist. And so there's so much more there, obviously, to be explored. Um, and so I think it's very exciting to be witness to that moment where people are able to cross over and to sit with the discomfort, the unknown, the mess, the play, and all that can emerge from that space. And yeah, I think also similar to Pallavi, I have a background in graphic design. And so I kind of, as a career, was really making beautiful things, making art as a product. And so to shift into art as a process was a big jump. And I would imagine many of you have also found your way in a way that fits into capitalism or so many of these systems. So it is a bit of a jump and a transition into this field, but it is infinite once you enter this realm. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Kripa. Yeah, and thank you for kind of distinguishing. I think sometimes there is a lot of confusion about art as a product and art as a process. And of course, art as a product has its place and value. Yeah. But art as a process is something that is really accessible to everybody. Yeah, it's a form of expression. It's a space where we move towards authenticity, um, uh, uh, and move away from perfectionism towards authenticity. It when I, because my work is primarily with the body, one of the ways I distinguish it is uh, the difference between objectifying the body and inhabiting the body. So uh, and I think we see a lot of perfectionism when we work with body, but how strong it should be, how it should look, how young, at 50 you're supposed to look 30, how health, and it's kind of twisted in a way that um, health, which everyone is aspiring towards, is kind of used to uh, to terrorize, really. uh, and we lose touch with what is our own natural rhythm and our way of inhabiting our body. Yes, so I think that kind of and I think, again, when if to kind of I know I just had a class, and I see some of you all from that class, where we talked quite extensively about when we don't inhabit our body, our relationship to our body is really, our body becomes an object. And the big danger of that is we objectify other bodies. And when we are in that place, there is nothing we can't do to another or to self, right? Because they are not real, they are not people. Uh, they are seen as the other, or they're seen, or even to ourselves, right? When we kind of force ourselves that, uh, work out so much, work so many hours a day, we kind of push, like the body is really only seen as what it's capable of doing, whereas it is so much more. And yeah, and yeah, so I think that perfectionism, and I, again, when we go back to Leonard Cohen's song, which I find so meaningful, is it's when that perfectionism cracks that we can begin to access depth or deeper self, that we can allow the light to come in and allow the light to come out. It's that, because one of one of the things we do in this work is really to move, when we talk about shadow, is to move towards integration, to move towards wholeness, where all of us is accepted. Like, yeah, so I'm sorry, I'm just going to stop there, and I'm going to move on to the next topic, which I uh, one of the things that we do in Body Remembers is we work with myth. Specifically, we will be working with the myth of La Loba, but more than that myth, I want to just again have both Pallavi and Kripa really talk about the personal myth and the creation myth, and how do they kind of, what that engagement. um yeah, I mean, I have a few thoughts. One is, I think there's a big narrative that goes around that when you take care of yourself, you are selfish. And so we're constantly kind of leaving our job or our responsibility of figuring out what we want and doing what's good for us to serve another, and then we're a little bit disconnected from who we are. That disconnection itself is a huge wounding, but I think the big danger of that is we are no longer in a position of giving ourselves what we want or need. Yeah. So yeah, so the personal, so it feels like a paradox, but each person being in alignment to themselves creates a healthy society. Yeah, but we're kind of taught that if you put your needs first, you're selfish, and then we kind of stray away from that, and what we create in the bargain is dysfunction. Yeah, we kind of are serving the other, hoping someone will serve us, and they're never able to do that job. um, I I wanted, I know I'm just kind of, it's very generic, but what I really want to talk about is, I mean, I hope Pallavi and Kripa, you all can talk about, is how does the personal myth and the creation myth, how do they come together? How do they part? And maybe first just tell us a little bit about what personal myth is, what creation myths are, and what are the stories behind it that offer, they kind of offer a roadmap for this process in some way. Maybe Pallavi, I can't see
Yeah,
Kripa. Yeah,
Kripa's here. So,
but I can't see. Yeah, she's here.
I'm here, but yeah, maybe
Yeah,
Pallavi.
okay, so I'll actually just maybe talk a little bit about myths and frame it, and then and Kripa, we can sort of jam. You can come in and we both can um sort of respond to this together. So I work a lot with myth, and when I say myth, it's also, of course, the myths that are out there in different cultures, but also a lot of stories. And the way I'd like to frame it is that it serves as sort of a projective tool, where they ask the story where where you can project aspects onto the frame of the story, the characters, the themes, uh, the emotional landscape, the environment, and sort of work aspects through the story in itself. Um, because often when we have to look at some of these aspects which are so close to us, it is really difficult to look at it so directly. So using myths and stories offer sort of a projective tool where we look at it in the lens of the story, but really you're working through some of the aspects that are really present for you. So that's sort of step one of how I would use myths within the drama therapy space. And myths also hold sort of several themes and human experiences, sort of sometimes in an amplified way, where it uses symbols and metaphors. And we work with the symbols and metaphors. And so this is, if they are existing myths, we're going to use that myth to sort of personalize it and play with it. That's one aspect. And the other is where with personal myths, maybe Kripa, you can come in terms of what that looks like at developing. But I'll speak more in terms of what this looks like when we do bring in stories to play with, because we are all stories. I mean, that's how I look at, we're all stories, we're all carrying stories of our experiences. We carry stories of our relational sort of connections with people, with ourselves and the world around. And sometimes the, it's not always what we want it to be, but it is, we carry the story of how it is and how we want it to be. And sometimes to look at it with a different lens, we use the lens of the myths and stories and unpack it from there to also shift our relationship with these stories. And sometimes they are stories of trauma. And before we look at the story itself, it would be helpful to also look at stories just as they are constructed, to work with it, and then look at your own and build your connection in remembering your story in a certain frame. And that's how personal myths can be developed. And I'm sure, Krupa, you have your own process that you'd want to highlight while talking about personal myths. I'm wondering if you want to come about. Yeah.
Thank you, Pallavi. That was like a beautiful framing of all of this. It's hard to capture all of it. I think for me, it all can begin to feel a bit abstract as we're talking about these concepts and ideas. So I would love to offer an example. So I'd like to share a piece of my own artwork. Actually, Pallavi, will you bring it up for me, please? And so this is, I suppose, my own personal myth, and it's a part of my story. This is a piece that I created that's very meaningful to me. It captures some part of my own mythology and my own story. And I think what's really unique about it, not only that it's my personal story, but that it's created with materials that feel really authentic. And so the paper is made with 3 layers of recycled cotton saris in a very traditional method, with a chalk paste and tamarind seed glue. It's all pasted together. I've embroidered the edge with red thread. I've used mendi and kumkum to print the imagery, and I've also put bindis all over it. There's a lot of references to my family and culture and many something that goes on. And it kind of reads left to right, like a scroll. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I think there were some bits we missed.
Okay.
I don't know if it's
I'll go
me,
ahead.
but yeah, I think it's all right. Yeah.
Okay. I'll trust that whatever that what needs to come through will come. I hope. Yeah. I hope you'll at least hear and see a bit of my story through there. I am a woman born from a fiery karma, an old soul with a resilience. My dawning year face of
We've lost you, Kripa. Is it just for me? No, we've lost you.
No,
Okay.
we've lost her. It's
Yeah.
such a shame. I don't know, Kripa, if you want to send it, that one of us could read it, if you feel comfortable doing that.
Ah, she dropped out.
Oh, she dropped out. Okay,
But
let's
I
do
know that
this.
Kripa is joining from Kathmandu, and I know the internet just got better, and there were like some lines that they fixed this morning, so it could be some issues. But maybe when she comes back, she can read it.
Yeah, I think we can leave the artwork there for when she comes back. But meanwhile, or maybe Pallavi, we can stop sharing and just stop for a bit of a break and ask for questions, and then come back to this when Kripa is back. I'll send her a message asking her if she would like one of us to read it. But meanwhile, just opening it out to questions. I know we've said a lot, and one of the reasons we wanted to have this fireside chat was because this work is so experiential. It's difficult to explain over a phone conversation or a email, So I really felt meeting the trainers, kind of sharing the work, would help you all kind of get a feel of what it is we're doing and what we're and the kind of space we're setting. But let's just open the space for some questions, if there are any questions at all or any responses.
Hello, can you hear me? I'm
Yes,
Mukta.
Mukta. Yeah, we can.
Um, so I wrote this in the chat as well. But
Yeah.
the way that Pallavi spoke about the shadow made me think about finding my lost self. I have a similar story to Pallavi, but kind of um, it's gone on for too long. I think Pallavi stood up for herself at the right time. But like I was also kind of pressured into the sciences. Not that I didn't find it interesting. I was good enough at it and I found it interesting to some degree, but I didn't know where my calling was. And now, more recently, I've turned towards art and it's deeply fulfilling. And I'm self-taught and and I didn't have the art school striving for perfection, but I still feel that part of myself is kind of lost in this struggle. I'm still trying to find that part of myself that was suppressed in, doing studying the kind of studies that, would make money and give me a career and that kind of thing. So I feel like maybe my shadow has something to do with that lost self. I don't know if this is accurate or an accurate reading of the shadow, but I just wanted maybe Pallavi to say something.
Thank you for that response. And I want to say, yeah, yes. Um, I just read your response as well on the chat. The lost self, and what would that journey look like to go back and meet that part and see where it's at right now? Because I mean, the way I see it is, it's not lost; it's just hidden.
Yeah.
Like you rightly mentioned, it's
Yeah.
repressed. So, what would it look like to give permission and encourage it within such spaces that are contained and held,
Yeah.
for you to slowly meet that part and build a relationship? Yeah, I mean, it's exciting as you named it so rightly. I was like, yes,
All right. Thank you.
thank you, Bhakta.
Thanks, Pallavi.
I just want to say Krupa's here as well.
I'm
Krupa's
sorry, I
back.
don't have my video on because the connection's really bad here.
No
Yeah.
problem. Kripa, are you able to share? Can we go back to your artwork? Because I felt it was really powerful and we'd love to hear the poem if you feel.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to try again. And
Okay,
maybe
okay.
if it doesn't happen, then we can leave it for questions also. If it's not
Yeah,
meant to be, it's all
sure.
right. Yeah. Hmm. Speaking of imperfections, huh? This is part of the journey. So I hope you heard a little bit my description of the materials. Yeah, okay. So I'll just read again from the beginning. It's a little bit of a spoken word that accompanies this piece, and it's like a scroll, so you can look at it from left to right. I am a woman born from a fiery karma, an old soul with a destiny for resilience. In my dawning years, the natural space of innocence, wonder, and play was a window very abruptly closed and shattered. I suffered but survived repeated attempts over many years to control, break, and diminish my spirit. Somehow, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in these shattered pieces, and I became witness to my soul's potential. I picked up the pieces, I picked up a pen, and I picked up a paintbrush. I released my anger through line, I mourned my childhood through color. And in my journals, I found a safe space, I found healing. I found awareness, I found solace unavailable anywhere else. I imagined and dreamt of a different reality, one filled with color, creativity, connection, and love, and I now lived that life. I learned that I was not alone, that this is not what all children experience. I then reacted with a fiery impulse, a defense, a refusal to be beaten down, to be quieted, to be told that I was worthless. And by some miracle, I found the strength to put my hand up and to say no. This was a rite of passage, a crossroads of transformation for my soul. And with my freedom came confusion and many years of fragmented attempts to understand, to forgive, to be compassionate, and to simply be. As I molded and nurtured grounding in my mind, my heart, my body, and my soul, my life exploded with creativity. I connected to my inner source of that creative power, and I have not stopped. It is my lifeline, so I cannot stop. I'm a bridge between cultures, differences, generations, ancestors speaking through art. Everything I do is an offering. I'm grateful, humble, and I'm aware that this is only another beginning. So I hope you were able to hear it. Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
it was perfect actually. No interruptions. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kripa. That
of
was
course.
very powerful.
Mm.
Also, just really appreciate uh, your generosity in sharing this today. You know, it's uh, it's really an honor for us to be able to witness this, and I mean, for me, it really speaks to the process and speaks to the depth that you've journeyed. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Brenda. Again, like I think I was cut off from saying before, I think it can be so hard to explain all these concepts and ideas,
Yeah,
how our work functions, but I felt like this was a very meaningful example for me that was very fulfilling to get to a point in life and understand materials and be able to express it. And so I hope the same for all of you, I think, entering this field as well.
thank you. Um, Yeah, I mean, I just think on that note, if we can maybe just take a bit of a pause, um, get a sense of, um, the liminal world we inhabit actually, as we navigate, and encounter different sides of ourselves. And, so just kind of pausing for a moment, acknowledging that world. And opening it out for questions, in a minute, but also to just, um, yeah, just to say that the questions can may sound mundane to you. That's not a problem. Yeah, because we have to start drawing the bridges into these different worlds, so yeah, so yeah, please feel free to ask questions. And I also just want to say, since we have a little time, I just wanted to introduce Katya, who's also the faculty, not on the Body Remembers module, but she has her own module for the XB program, which is and maybe Katya can speak a little bit about it. And you can also kind of, yeah, make sense of this work through another lens. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe Katya, do you want to start while people? I mean, maybe the questions can come in chat so I can read them out.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Krupa and Paravi and Belinda. It's always so grateful. Always feels like coming home when I when I come in these gatherings. So thank you so much. I'm Katya. I'm calling from Amsterdam, but I'm actually um, from Montreal. But for some of you who know me, I've lived a big part of my life in Nepal. So when I heard Krupa was in Kathmandu, it's really my heart. I wish I was able to be there now. That's a big part of my life, Nepal and India. And so yeah, so I teach in the module the trauma and the body. So it's a different lens, let's say, but a very complementing one. Um, Using the body to enter to enter the present moment. So it's a really opportunity to discover how do we show up in trauma informed ways, because we know the creative modalities, the expressive arts are so rich, but at the same time, how do we show up in our spaces and not recreating power dynamics? How do we not take away agency? So maybe introducing trauma informed ways of being. That's a big part of the module, understanding trauma and the body, the impact on all of this on the body. There's also a big component, which is resource building and self care, group care, and body work. But I think for me is really in this the module that I facilitate or hold space for. It's really discovering our ways of being, um, and that's the body and our felt sense of our body in the present moment. So that's maybe something I wanted to say. I have a little bridge with community. I work mostly with communities affected by war and conflict and displacement. So from refugee camps to displaced to settlement camps to communities, hosting communities. But I also have a big component in clinical work and what is called prolonged grief disorder. So I say all in parentheses because this is what they name it, but I really, so how do you navigate? Yes, the clinical world, the science, and then the community, and then of course the education. So I travel among these three spheres. And I always love to take part in these sharings, to hear from my peers and colleagues, and how to make bridges to all of these, I would say, the oceans of knowledge that meet. And I think that's what I wanted to say. Yeah. So thank you, Belinda, for gathering everyone together. And I did have a question for all three of
Sure.
you. I don't know if I can continue with that.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. What I find very fascinating is that you have chosen to do this together, to
Ah, yeah.
facilitate this together. And and what do you think, what complements or what uh, clashes or what strengthens, and how do you see this in the module? How do you see this coming together in the
One is, I think,
module?
just with the arts itself, we come from different modalities. Mine tends to be movement and dance. Pallavi is predominantly drama, and Kripa is predominantly visual art. Of course, both Pallavi, Kripa, you know, are kind of proficient in other art forms as well. Less so. Yeah, so one is the because I think there's been uh, depth work in different modalities that one person alone may not have done justice to. For example, Kripa's kind of extensive research on materials, what material to work through which process. And, so as expressive art therapist, of course, I offer art to my clients, but it does not have the nuance or the depth that Kripa's work would probably have, and same with the drama. And also, I know that Pallavi's work around the community and neurodivergence is really, it's a huge source of support also for the work that we do at Smart, right? For our training programs, because when we are talking about mental health, to be able to look at diverse populations, it's really necessary. Similarly with what Kripa offers or what you offer. Yeah, and I think when we say expressive arts, when we are kind of looking at through the lenses of, we shift our perspective as we shift modality. um, I also think something of that happens when we have more than one trainer. I think there's so much more richness that we bring for the participants to avail of in this short time that we have together. So that, I mean, that's really my uh, my thought. The other the other reason, I mean, of course, I'm all our modules kind of explore um, uh, this um, the heroine's journey in many ways. Yeah, the descent. So it's kind of, it comes as a motive. I think we look at different angles around it, but it's really about, and I think again, come back to today's theme of uh, staying away from perfection. It's really about looking. I think the Buddhists have a practice called feeding the demons. Yeah. So instead of repressing and staying away from that which makes us uncomfortable, to really bring it to life. I mean, of course, the Buddhist meditative practice is quite a deep, intense practice, but I think this is what we do in therapy. Is that we discover parts of ourselves and bring it to light, and both the parts that give us strength and the parts, because our strength really lies in our vulnerability. So even the parts that feel scary to go towards, um, yeah, um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Katya, but I also would be curious to hear from Pallavi and Kripa how they see the coming together, and anything that conflict. I'm not able to see anything that conflicts right now, but yeah, I'd be open to hearing.
I mean, to immediately respond, I think both Brinda and Krupa, I've been following their work, and as colleagues, we don't really get to be a part of these sessions that's actually offered. So for me, I think it's exciting to work with one another and actually share and see how we can also weave in our offerings together and thematically look at things. So I think it's actually quite rich because um, just as we are planning, I can feel the excitement. I don't want to give it all away, um, but there is an excitement to see how these different modalities are weaved in. And I think also generally when I work with groups and with clients, it is sort of weaved in with different modalities. It's never just always only purely drama therapy. And I think also if we look at things contextually within the Indian sort of the way art is looked at in India, it's quite collaborative. We do use, like, drama has visual arts, has movement, has music, and we've always looked at it that way. And it's only later that it got bifurcated, that they have to be separate. Uh, so I feel like this is one of those modules where we get to play together with these modalities. And so I think as someone who's receiving it, I'd love to hear what it is like. I think for folks who are going to do the module. Um, yeah, and I think the intention is to make sure it's weaved in a very coherent and, you know, contained way. The rest of it we'll know. I'm just going to leave that bit to the unknown. Yeah, that's
Thank
where
you,
I'm.
Pallavi. Um, Kripa, could you?
Yeah, I can respond. Thank you, Katya, for that question. And you're definitely here in spirit.
We can't hear you.
Um,
Kripa, we're not able to hear you.
so thinking about this, where does it can you not?
No, we can't hear you. Do you want to put it in chat? That's easier. Oh, she's dropped off.
Dropped out.
Okay, so I'm going to just quickly look at the questions on the chat. Is that okay, Pallavi?
Yeah.
So Soumya is designed as part of the ongoing EXP. So Soumya, actually, we've changed the design of the EXP program. It's now module based. Yeah. So people who so one of the things we felt was the kind of work that we were offering, especially because it has to do with there's a lot of trauma work. Um, it comes from depth psychology, which felt like 1 year, the 1 year that the XP students originally had, was not really enough for them to necessarily have had a personal process around a lot of these themes and to do their personal journey justice. So one of the things we decided was that we would break it up in modules. So people who felt ready to do all the modules together and do a 1 year program, they go ahead. But some people may feel like I need to sit with this one module for a little while before I sign up for the next. So that becomes the other option. And finally, we also have the modules. So there are, for example, our old EXP students that want to revisit some of these modules. So they get a chance to do that. And so each module will have a credit. So you kind of just accumulate credits in order to get the EXP certification, which doesn't then necessarily have to happen in 1 year. It can be spread over. So because at Smart, we really believe that your personal process is central. So sometimes it can feel like a conflict with not this is not an academic program, but with a training program which is limited by space and time. The personal process can sometimes feel like it's in conflict with that. So we felt like, okay, especially a program like EXP, which has so much to do with depth psychology. Um, so we kind of felt this gives it an opportunity to uh, you know one is that, two is um, also there are people who are trained therapists who may be interested in certain modalities, not necessarily wanting to do the entire program. They get access to this, so it is a mixed group. um Suhina, to someone who's new to this field, so I'm going to say yes, you can use the body remembers as an experiential module in order to facilitate your own inner process. Yes, you're not going to be trained to use this with volunteer clients or client work, but you can use it to facilitate your own inner journey. Um, so you come in as a participant who's experiencing the program, yeah, not to use it as a training program. So that would be the difference. Whereas people who come in trained, this becomes a skill that they may be able to offer, but this specifically Body Remembers is an experiential program. It is to yeah. I don't know if Pallavi or Kripa want to add.
I just came
Oh, we can't hear you.
back. I'm so sorry, everyone. I think some lines have been cut.
I think it's a little better now, Kripa, though. I have to say, your poem was so beautiful from beginning to end. There's the spoken word. Kind of interesting.
Yeah, I guess what was meant to be shared was shared. Can you hear me now? I
Yes,
can
yes.
try. Okay. I'm sorry, I think some lines were cut here in all this conflict, so it's a bit of a miracle that I can join. Um, yeah, I was thinking about the three of us working together and that we form a triangle as well. And I think
Yes.
that collaboration is really the future. So I'm very excited for how aligned we are in many ways, but also that we bring different perspectives. And I trust that whatever difficulty, whatever's unpredictable, I believe that we can hold space to what emerges. And as we were planning the program a little bit, I was thinking about how really what we're offering is an opportunity for people to capture and express and understand what their body is carrying, be able to move through that, right? And then also to be able to change those stories. I think that that's part of, what we are bringing in our offering together. And I think that's quite special and unique. And yeah, I'm very excited for what's to come.
Thank you. Well, if there are any more questions, um, we're happy to take them. You can also end it here if people are tired.
Sorry, this is Mukta again.
Yeah, hi, Mukta.
I put this in the chat, but
Yeah, sorry, I saw it. You wanted reading material.
yeah, if you
Um,
have some recommendations.
yeah, we can send you a reading list, but what could you send an email to hello@smartmove.co.in? I'll put it on
Sure.
chat. It would just be easier to send you a thing via email.
Hello at Smart Move.
Yeah, I'm putting it on chat.
Okay. Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Tanushri.
Hi everybody, good evening. I'm so sorry, not just good evening, but I know some people are joining from different parts of the world. So, hello to everybody.
Hi.
I'm so sorry, I'm having to keep my video off. There's some connectivity
No
issues.
problem.
But thank you so much, first of all, for the beautiful conversation. It's not like all the time we have such free events happening to spread the wisdom and knowledge of the arts. So really appreciate the time and energy that everybody has taken out here. Um, just a little bit of context before I ask the question. Um, it's that I'm a counseling psychologist and an expressive arts therapy practitioner practicing for 2 years in Indian context. Um, so the question is mostly around, when probably as psychologists employed at certain organizations which are a little, for the lack of a better word, commercial in nature or a little capitalistic in nature, where session durations are like shorter for like 40-45 minutes, um, and the employers or the different stakeholders also, be it the psychiatrists or the different psychologists from practicing different other schools of thought, approaches, they do not really understand the arts per se. And especially, I think I'm still struggling to find the right words to sort of like define or explain, or I think how beautifully the conversation also panned out here about perfectionism, and also how difficult it can be to explain the arts if I don't invite you to experience it. I can tell you a bunch of things, but it's so hard. So And there's so much resistance even from the field that I'm personally experiencing, that um, some senior professionals, and not to mention anybody in particular, but there's so much resistance in even accepting the arts in the mainstream approaches of mental health care. So it just sounds like so scary to even, uh, find the right words to advocate for it or bring it in sessions with clients, even if it's like for 40-45 minutes, which feels a little bit like a lesser time because there's so much depth and preparation and warm up that the arts may require, and also cool down and bridging out that's also needed to transition now. So I'm just wondering if anybody here would, any of the speakers or anybody, right, would have any thoughts or opinions around. Possibly, I'm looking for courage to find ways of spreading out in certain mainstream. Even at this point, I'm not sure if I'm using the right words, so I'm sorry if I'm not making sense. But yeah, I think I'm just trying to probably understand if anybody has opinions on thoughts around possibly communicating or
Sure,
spreading.
Tanushri. Thank you for your question, and I really do wish you courage. I think it's always difficult to, um, you know, yeah, to carve out your own space. Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, I mean, if you look at Pallavi's example or Kripa's example, or even mine, that it is possible. Yeah, there is a lot of work that is available, and exciting work and collaborative work that can be done. But I'm going to just tell you why people, I mean, of course people are scared of the arts for many things, because but the main I think one of the main reasons is it has so much to do with the unknown. We are not when we create art, we are really surrendering to an unknown like we're surrendering to the unknown. We don't know what the product is going to look like. We don't have an idea in our head, and we don't set out to make it, right? The art process is really constantly stepping into the unknown, and that's kind of terrifying for people. But also, if you look at uh, you know psychiatrists and talk therapists, and who come from a very scientific background, it's understandable that the arts makes them uneasy, because no one path is the same for anybody else, right? So how do you kind of quantify what how do you research? So there is a lot of value to whatever research is being done, and I think there are lots of incredible people doing a lot of work and gathering and collating. But the art spills beyond that. It's beyond what can be collated, quantified, understood, or made sense of with the cognitive mind. It is an experience, uh, and one size doesn't fit all, and you can't then make it prescriptive. You can't you can't say, oh, this person has this symptoms and I will do these processes. So yeah, so but just I think, I mean, I don't know if this is going to necessarily give you courage, but I think there's space and value for each of these fields. I think there are enough clients who are interested to work with the arts. I think there are enough institutions that, especially, that who are happy to work with with the arts, because it is so much less invasive. It's so much more gentle. So I think as you find your feet and your ground, you will find these spaces that are welcoming of your work and appreciative of the work you do. And the ones that don't understand, it's fine. Yeah, we don't all have to follow the same path. I don't know if this helps you in any way.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to add to what Brinda's saying. But I also want to say, Tanushri, that this is something that I would like to believe that a lot of us in the arts therapies are trying to find that common language. And there is a building, or rather, a language that's being built within, so I would call it that ecosystem building, where a lot of the practitioners, like who've been doing this for decades. I know Britta's been doing the FECAT course for almost more than a decade, have really sort of set pathways for many of us to lean in and and continue work. So when you know they now, I know Nimhans is interested in setting up work where they're bringing in the arts. So slowly these really traditional institutes are opening themselves up, because there is a buzz, I can tell you, in at least globally. Globally, there's a lot of interest in terms of what is happening here in India at the intersection of arts and health. So the conversation is happening. We're just Many of us here are yet to catch up. And when I say many of us here, it's a lot of these, like you're saying, right? The conservative traditional ways of looking at therapy. And slowly there is a push to sort of broaden and expand the area of work with mental health. And also there's a lot of questions that are posed to these systems that seem very like hard and rigid, because even the field and how when you look at the field academically, it's a lot, like Kripa was speaking earlier. It's a lot that's borrowed from the West. It's a lot of the whiteness that is being questioned from the ground up, and there's a lot of content that's coming up from here, from India, which we can lean into. So um, yeah, I would say there's a lot happening there that you can sort of draw from and say, but there's all of this happening. How can I bring it in? Sort of to show proof, because sometimes they love evidence and proof, so to bring that in. Um, and you also spoke about one of the things I heard you ask about is also setting up that process within your own practice. And I think that's where you build a language with your own practice to see how you want to bring it in, um, and how within these systems you can sort of slowly bring in the arts, sort of infiltrate and conjure how we can bring in the arts. I've learned that historically, psychiatrists and psychologists used to have art material in the waiting room just so patients can be occupied and then come in. But now we're bringing in the arts, and that in itself is a process. So it's always been around. It's just that now we're finding language to define um, and find a way to also prove to the larger collective that this is relevant, and um, science is also opening up to this. So it's not like, we're moving away from the binary to really finding ways to connect, and that is happening slowly, but it is happening. So I just wanted to put it out there. Hope that helps you, Panch.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Brinda, Pallavi, and I see Kripa's message also. Um, I think connecting with other professionals and hearing your words really helps remind the brain and body that it's possible at its own pace. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. We have just about 5 minutes more. If there isn't any, there's one last question maybe, or yeah, we can also bring this to an end here. I just really want to thank Tati. I can't tell you how nice it is to see your face here. Yeah, and I thank you also, Pallavi, for literally being the face of this conversation while Kripa and I have been struggling with our internet. Kripa, thank you so much for being here, in the middle of everything that's going on, and really for sharing your process, which was really beautiful. Thank you for that. And thank you all of y'all who come here, and are interested in this work and interested to hear. Yeah, it means a lot. Um, we can close for today.
Thank you, Brinda, for bringing us together also.
Thank you.
Pallavi, I think you might be host, so you can end the meeting. Okay. Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.